My daughter said she couldn't afford to visit me. Then I saw her Instagram post from Paris. One call changed everything. The first sign of spring had finally appeared in our small suburban neighborhood. Daffodils peeked through the soil in my front yard, and I'd spent all morning preparing the guest bedroom. Fresh sheets with the lavender scent Maya loved, her favorite childhood books arranged on the nightstand, and a small vase of wildflowers picked from the backyard. Everything had to be perfect for my daughter's visit. It had been 8 months since I'd last seen her in person. 8 months of video calls that never lasted long enough, of text messages that couldn't possibly convey everything I wanted to say. 8 months of missing her laugh, her scent, the way she'd unconsciously tuck her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. As I smoothed the quilt over her bed, the same one my mother had made for her when she was born, my phone buzzed. Maya's name flashed across the screen, and my heart leapt. She wasn't supposed to call until tonight to confirm her arrival time tomorrow. Maya, sweetheart, I was just finishing up your room. The daffodils are starting to bloom, just like you love. There was a pause on the other end, and immediately I felt that familiar maternal instinct stir. Something was wrong. Mom. Her voice was tight, controlled in that way I recognized from countless past disappointments. I need to talk to you about the visit. My hand gripped the phone tighter as I sank onto the edge of the freshly made bed. What is it, honey? I can't make it this weekend. Or next weekend either. I'm so sorry. The air seemed to leave my lungs all at once. Oh, I forced myself to sound understanding. Is everything okay? Are you sick? No, nothing like that. Maya sighed, and I could picture her running her fingers through her dark hair, just as she'd done since she was a little girl facing a difficult math problem. It's just, money's really tight right now. The rent in Boston is killing me, and my student loan payment just came through. Plus, they cut my hours at the gallery last month. I closed my eyes, guilt washing over me. Of course, money was tight. It always had been, hadn't it? Even with the 2 jobs I'd worked throughout her childhood. Receptionist by day, bookkeeper by night, we'd always lived paycheck to paycheck. I'd scraped and saved to send her to college, but the loans she'd had to take out still haunted her. Sweetheart, I could help with the plane ticket. I've got a little saved up from the extra bookkeeping clients I took on this winter. The offer came automatically, even though the little I had saved was meant for fixing the leaking roof. No, Mom, absolutely not. Maya's voice grew firm. You've done enough, more than enough. I know how hard you work for that money. I traced the pattern on the quilt with my finger, thinking of all the nights I'd spent typing invoices while Maya did her homework at the kitchen table, beside me. All the school trips I'd worked extra shifts to afford. All the birthdays where I'd wrapped small, thoughtful gifts instead of the expensive electronics her friends received. It's fine, I said, though my throat felt tight. We'll reschedule, maybe in the summer? Definitely. Things should be better by then. The gallery director promised me more hours once tourist season picks up. We talked for a few more minutes about her work, about my garden plans, about nothing that mattered compared to the ache growing in my chest. When we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the carefully prepared room. It wasn't that I didn't understand. Of course I did. I'd spent decades making the same kinds of difficult choices Maya was making now. Skip the dentist appointment to pay the electric bill. Put off new shoes for another month to afford school supplies. The endless, exhausting calculus of not enough. But understanding didn't make the disappointment any less sharp. I finally stood up and closed the guest room door, leaving the fresh sheets and wildflowers to greet only empty air. That night, I reheated leftover lasagna instead of making the special roast chicken dinner I'd planned for Maya's arrival. As I ate alone at my small kitchen table, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Maya's high school graduation, her smile wide beneath the blue cap, the day she moved into her first apartment in Boston, surrounded by mismatched furniture we'd found at thrift stores. The 2 of us at Christmas last year, cheeks pressed together as we took a selfie in matching sweaters. The pain and pride twisted together in my chest, that familiar maternal knot that had formed the day she was born, and had only grown tighter as the years passed. I was proud of her independence, her determination to make her own way. But God, I missed her. I put my phone down and looked around my modest home. The walls needed a fresh coat of paint. The couch was worn at the armrests. The kitchen cabinets were the same ones that had been there when I bought the place 15 years ago. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just the home where I'd raised my daughter alone after her father decided family life wasn't for him. Had Maya outgrown this place? Outgrown me? The thought sent a chill through me that I'd tried to dismiss immediately. She was busy building her own life, just as I'd raised her to do. This wasn't about me. Still, as I washed my solitary dinner plate, I couldn't help but remember how excited she'd sounded 2 months ago when she'd first promised to visit. How we'd planned to go to the local art museum that had just opened a new contemporary wing. How she'd promised to help me replant the vegetable garden, as we did every spring. I pulled out a bottle of wine I'd been saving for her visit and poured myself a generous glass. Then I settled onto the couch with the mystery novel I'd been too busy preparing for Maya to read. The words blurred on the page as I thought about the weekend stretching ahead of me now, empty of the laughter and conversations I'd been looking forward to for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane, my closest friend and neighbor. "Still on for brunch with you and Maya on Sunday," it read. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Change of plans. Maya can't make it. Just me this weekend." Diane's response came quickly. "Oh no, everything okay? Just money troubles," I replied. "You know how it is." And Diane did know. She'd been there through the lean years, sometimes watching Maya when I worked late, sometimes dropping off casseroles when I was too exhausted to cook. She'd seen me count pennies for gas money and cry when Maya's college acceptance letter came with a scholarship that covered only half the tuition. "Come over tonight," Diane texted. "I've got chocolate and more wine." The invitation tempted me, but I declined. Some disappointments needed to be sat with alone, I thought. Some heartaches needed quiet to heal. Later, as I got ready for bed, I found myself pausing in front of the guest room door again. After a moment's hesitation, I opened it and walked to the nightstand. I picked up one of the books I'd set out, Maya's favorite childhood story about a mother rabbit and her baby. I remembered reading it to her night after night until she could recite the words along with me. "I'll always come back to you," the mother rabbit promised in the story. I ran my finger over the worn cover and whispered into the empty room, "And I'll always be here waiting when you do." I turned off the light and closed the door, trying to ignore the voice in my head that wondered if Maya's financial troubles were the only reason she wasn't coming home. A week crawled by. I filled my days with extra shifts at work, determined not to dwell on the empty guest room or the casserole still sitting in my freezer. By Friday evening, I'd almost convinced myself I was fine with Maya's cancellation. Almost. That night, I curled up on the couch with a cup of tea, mindlessly scrolling through my phone. I'd been avoiding social media all week, not wanting to see updates from friends whose children had come home for weekend visits. But the silence of the house pressed in around me, and I needed some semblance of connection. I opened Instagram, intending just to check on Diane's new grandbaby. That's when I saw it. Maya's profile picture illuminated with a colorful ring, indicating she had posted a story. I hesitated for only a moment before tapping on it. The image loaded and my teacup froze halfway to my lips. Maya stood beaming in front of the Eiffel Tower, her dark hair blowing in the wind, wearing a sleek black dress I'd never seen before. The caption read, "Paris dreams coming true. Day 1 of the best weekend ever." My fingers trembled as I swiped to the next image. Maya clinking champagne glasses with someone whose arm was just visible at the edge of the frame. Morning mimosas hit different in Paris. Living my best life. Next came a photo of an elaborate charcuterie board at what was clearly an upscale restaurant, followed by a video of Maya twirling in front of a luxury boutique, shopping bags dangling from her arms. The final image showed a hotel room view of the Paris skyline at sunset, with the caption, "Worth every penny for this view. So grateful for this escape." Every penny she supposedly didn't have. The phone slipped from my grasp, landing on the carpet with a soft thud. My chest felt hollowed out, as if someone had reached inside and scooped away everything that kept me breathing. She had lied to me. My daughter, my only child, had looked me in the eye, or at least through a video call, and lied about not being able to afford a trip to see me, all while planning a luxury weekend in Paris. I picked up the phone again, examining each image more carefully. The timestamp on the first photo showed she had arrived in Paris the very day she was supposed to come see me. This wasn't some last-minute opportunity. This was a choice. The tea grew cold beside me as questions swirled through my mind like autumn leaves caught in a windstorm. How long had she been planning this? Why hadn't she just told me the truth? That she preferred Paris to visiting her mother? That would have hurt, but at least it wouldn't have been a lie. And who was she with? That partial arm in the champagne photo wore what looked like an expensive watch. A friend? A boyfriend I didn't know about? I found myself scrolling back months through Maya's feed, looking for clues I might have missed. Now that I was paying attention, I noticed subtle changes. Designer labels I recognized from my years of flipping through magazines I could never afford to shop from. Restaurants that cost more for a single meal than my weekly grocery budget. Weekend trips to places like the Hamptons and Miami. When had my struggling artist daughter started living like this? And why hadn't she shared any of it with me? The clock on the wall ticked past midnight as I sat frozen in my living room, feeling as though I'd wandered into someone else's life by mistake. The daughter in these glossy photos seemed like a stranger, not the girl who had once cried over a $30 art supply purchase because she knew how hard I'd worked for that money. I flipped back to her Paris photos one more time. Each glamorous image was a knife twisting deeper into my heart. Not just because she had chosen Paris over me, but because she had felt the need to lie about it. What did that say about our relationship? About the trust and honesty I thought we shared? I thought of all the times I'd gone without so she could have what she needed. The lunches skipped to for her dance lessons. The ancient car I drove so she could have a reliable laptop for school. The vacations never taken so she could attend summer art programs. I didn't begrudge her any of it. That's what mothers do. They sacrifice. But in return, all I'd ever asked for was honesty. My thumb hovered over the phone icon next to her name. It was the middle of the night for me, which meant early morning in Paris. She would be awake, perhaps enjoying another fancy breakfast at some charming cafe. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table and walked to the window instead. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Somewhere under those same stars, my daughter was living a life she had chosen to hide from me. Tomorrow, I would decide what to do. Tonight, I would let myself feel the full weight of this betrayal. But as I finally climbed into bed hours later, I knew sleep would not come. All I could see when I closed my eyes was Maya's smiling face against the Parisian backdrop, and all I could hear was her voice saying she couldn't afford to visit me. Morning arrived with no mercy for my sleepless night. I'd spent hours cycling through emotions, hurt, anger, confusion, and a gnawing sense of betrayal that sat like lead in my stomach. By the time dawn broke through my bedroom window, I knew I couldn't let this fester any longer. I made coffee, strong and black, and sat at my kitchen table with my phone. It would be mid-afternoon in Paris now. I took a deep breath and dialed Maya's number before I could talk myself out of it. 1 ring, 2, 3. Mom, hi. Maya's voice was bright, breezy, tinged with that slight echo that comes from being on speaker. In the background, I could hear the muffled sounds of traffic and animated French conversations. I was just thinking about you. There's this little bakery here that makes these amazing chocolate croissants that would blow your mind. I closed my eyes, my grip tightening on the phone. She spoke as if everything was normal, as if she hadn't lied straight to my face. Where exactly is here, Maya? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. A brief pause. What do you mean? I think you know what I mean. I took another sip of coffee, willing my voice not to croak. I saw your Instagram posts. The background noise on her end suddenly diminished, as if she ducked into somewhere quieter. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, cautious. Oh, I was going to tell you about the trip when I got back. Were you? Like how you told me you couldn't afford to visit because of rent and bills and student loans. The bitterness I'd tried to contain seeped into my words. Yet somehow you can afford Paris. Luxury hotels, shopping sprees. Mom, it's not what you think. What exactly should I think, Maya? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you chose Paris over seeing your mother, and you lied about why. Another pause, longer this time. I could practically see her, pacing in small circles the way she always did when cornered, biting her lower lip as she searched for words. I didn't pay for the trip, she finally said, her voice small. What do you mean you didn't pay for it? Did you win some contest I don't know about? No. She took an audible breath. Nathan paid for it. He wanted to surprise me. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. Nathan? Who's Nathan? The silence stretched between us, miles and oceans wide. My boyfriend, she finally answered. We've been seeing each other for about 4 months now. 4 months. My daughter had been in a relationship serious enough for international travel for 4 months, and I was just hearing about it now. And this boyfriend, he just happens to be wealthy enough to whisk you off to Paris on a whim. I tried to keep the judgment from my voice, but I could hear it slip through. Yes, he has money. He's in finance. He's a bit older than me. How much older? I cut in. Another hesitation. 15 years. I inhaled sharply. Maya was 25, which would make this Nathan 40. Old enough to be established in his career, certainly. Old enough to have a lifestyle that could include spontaneous trips to Paris. Old enough to know better than to encourage a young woman to lie to her mother. So let me get this straight, I said, carefully setting down my mug before I could drop it. You have a boyfriend who's 15 years older than you, whom you've been dating for 4 months, and you've never once mentioned him to me. And instead of introducing him to your mother or telling me about this relationship, you lied about being broke so you could go to Paris with him. I knew you would react like this. Maya's voice rose defensively. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You're judging him without even meeting him. I'm not judging him, Maya. I'm hurt that you lied to me. My voice cracked despite my efforts. Why couldn't you just tell me the truth? That you wanted to go to Paris instead of visiting me? Because I knew you'd make me feel guilty. You always do this. Make me feel like I'm a man to you if I choose anything else. Her words struck me like a physical blow. Is that how she saw me? As some clingy, guilt-tripping mother who couldn't let her daughter live her own life? That's not fair, I whispered. Isn't it, Mom? You've made your whole life about me. Every sacrifice, every choice, you never let me forget it. I never meant to. Look, Maya interrupted, her voice softening slightly. There's more to it. Nathan, he has some business dealings that aren't exactly conventional. I knew you wouldn't approve. A cold feeling spread through my chest. What does that mean, not conventional? It's complicated, but he's a good person, Mom. He takes care of me. He makes me happy. Happy enough to lie to the person who raised you alone for 25 years? The words escaped before I could stop them. Silence fell between us again, heavy with all the things said and unsaid. I have to go, Maya finally said. Nathan's waiting for me. We're having dinner with some of his business associates tonight. Maya, wait. I'll call you when I'm back in Boston, okay? We can talk more then. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long time after Maya hung up. The silence of my kitchen suddenly oppressive. Outside, a neighbor mowed his lawn, the drone of the engine a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. How had we gotten here? When had my daughter, the little girl who once told me everything, from playground squabbles to teenage crushes, become someone who kept such significant secrets? My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway, needing something to do with my hands. I found myself opening Instagram again, scrolling through Maya's feed with new eyes. There were subtle signs I'd missed before. A man's hand occasionally visible at the edge of a photo, expensive restaurants captioned only with food emojis, locations that seemed beyond a gallery assistant's budget. As I studied the images, my phone buzzed with a text. Maya, I'm sorry I hung up. Can we talk? Really talk? My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to let her feel a fraction of the hurt I was feeling. But the bigger part, the mother part, couldn't turn away. I'm here, I texted back. Moments later, my phone rang. Mom? Maya's voice was different now, smaller, more vulnerable. The background was quiet. She must have found a private spot. I'm listening, I said, working to keep my voice neutral. I should have told you about Nathan from the beginning. She took a shaky breath. But I was scared. Scared of what, Maya? Of me? No, yes, I don't know. She paused. Scared of disappointing you. I waited, giving her space to continue. Remember how you always taught me to judge people by their character, not their wallet? To value honesty and hard work above everything? Her voice caught. Nathan, he doesn't exactly fit that mold. What does that mean? He makes money quickly. And sometimes, not entirely by the book. She lowered her voice. There've been investigations into his firm. Nothing proven, but enough that he's had to navigate some legal gray areas. My stomach dropped. Are you telling me he's involved in something illegal? Not illegal exactly, just creative finance. Everyone does it at his level, he says. I closed my eyes, remembering all the lessons I thought I'd instilled: integrity, honesty, the value of earning what you have. Had none of it stuck. And you're okay with this? With being with someone who cuts corners? Who might be one investigation away from real trouble? That's why I didn't tell you. Her voice rose again. I knew you'd look at me like I'm betraying everything you taught me, like I'm choosing money over morals. Aren't you? The words came out sharper than I intended. It's not that simple, Mom. Do you know what it's like to always be counting pennies? To turn down dinners with friends because you can't afford the restaurant? To live in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates at 25 because that's all you can manage in Boston? Her words stung because I did know I'd lived that reality for decades, but I'd done it with my head held high, believing that integrity mattered more than luxury. With Nathan, I can breathe for the first time, she continued. I don't have to check my bank account before every purchase. I can live in a beautiful place, eat amazing food, travel, and all it costs is looking the other way when it comes to how he makes his money? I asked quietly. The silence that followed told me everything. I didn't mean to fall for him, she finally said. It just happened. He was a client at the gallery, bought 3 pieces in one day, asked me to dinner to discuss art. He was so different from the guys my age. Sophisticated, established, genuinely interested in my opinions. And the fact that he's wealthy had nothing to do with it? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Of course it did! Her honesty surprised me, but not in the way you think. It wasn't about the money itself. It was about what it represented: stability, security, things I've never really had. That hurt more than anything else she could have said. Had I failed so completely as a mother that my daughter hadn't felt secure growing up? Maya, we might not have had much, but we always had each other. We always had a home. I know that, Mom. Her voice softened. And I'm grateful. But I also grew up watching you work yourself to exhaustion, worrying about bills, never taking care of yourself, always putting me first. That's what parents do. And I love you for it. But I also promised myself I wouldn't live that way as an adult. She paused. When Nathan offered to take me to Paris, part of me wanted to tell you the truth. But I was ashamed, not of him, but of myself. For wanting the life he offers, for being tired of struggling. I closed my eyes, trying to understand. Hadn't I wanted better for her too? Hadn't all my sacrifices been so she could have opportunities I never had? I didn't expect to fall for him, she continued. But I did. And now I'm caught between the world you raised me in and the one he's showing me, between your values and his, between what you want for me and what I might want for myself. For the first time, I glimpsed the real burden Maya had been carrying. Not just the secret of Nathan, but the weight of trying to bridge 2 worlds, 2 sets of values, 2 visions of what her life could be. Maya, I said, finally, my voice steadier than I felt. This isn't about Nathan's money, or even about his questionable business practices, though that concerns me deeply. Then what is it about? She asked, a defensive edge still lingering in her tone. It's about trust, about honesty. I stood up from the kitchen table, needing to move as emotions threatened to overwhelm me. You lied to me, not just about the Paris trip, but about an entire relationship, about a significant part of your life. I was going to tell you eventually. When? After how many more lies? How many more canceled visits? The hurt I'd been containing encroached suddenly, my voice breaking. Do you have any idea what it felt like to prepare your room, to plan our weekend, only to have you cancel with an excuse that turned out to be completely false, and then to discover the truth through social media? Of all places? Her silence told me my words had hit home. I would have understood if you'd said you wanted to go to Paris with your boyfriend, I continued. I would have been disappointed about the visit, yes, but I would have been happy for you. Instead, you chose deception. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. And how did that work out? I asked softly. Because finding out this way hurt far more than the truth would have. I heard her sniffle on the other end of the line. Once the sound of my daughter crying would have immediately softened me, made me rush to comfort her. But now, it only emphasized the distance between us. A distance created not by miles, but by dishonesty. For 25 years, I have given you everything I possibly could, I said, my voice low and intense. I worked 2 jobs so you could take art classes. I drove that old Toyota until it literally fell apart because new car payments would have meant no money for your school trips. I wore the same winter coat for a decade so you could have new boots each year. Mom, I know. No, I need you to really hear this. I cut her off, the words pouring out now, impossible to stop. I never resented a single sacrifice. Not one. Because seeing you grow into your dreams was worth every late night, every missed opportunity, every penny pinched. All I ever asked in return was your honesty. I pressed my hand against the cool surface of my refrigerator, steadying myself. Photos of Maya through the years were held there by magnets. Maya at her high school graduation. Maya in her first apartment. Maya at her first gallery showing. A visual timeline of my greatest love and pride. And now I find out that you've been living a double life, that you've been ashamed to tell me about a relationship that's clearly important to you, that you'd rather lie to my face than be honest about your choices. The silence stretched between us, heavy with all that had been said and all that remained unspoken. I made a mistake, Maya finally said. Her voice small. I was wrong to lie to you. But is it so hard to understand why I did it? You've always had such clear ideas about right and wrong, about how people should live, what they should value. And honesty isn't something people should value? I asked incredulously. Of course it is, but Mom, sometimes I feel like I can never live up to your standards. Like any choice I make that's different from what you would choose is automatically wrong in your eyes. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Had I been so rigid, so judgmental, that my own daughter felt she couldn't be honest with me about her life? That's not true, I said. But even to my own ears, the protest sounded weak. Isn't it? When I told you I wanted to major in art instead of something practical, you didn't speak to me for 3 days. I was worried about your future, about how you'd support yourself. I know that now. But at 18, all I felt was that I'd disappointed you by following my passion. I sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly exhausted. Had my attempts to guide and protect actually pushed her away? Had my own fears for her future created this gulf between us? Maya, I may not always understand or agree with your choices, I said carefully. But I have always wanted you to be happy. That's all any parent wants for their child. Even if my happiness comes from a path you wouldn't choose, from someone you wouldn't choose. The question hung in the air between us, challenging and vulnerable all at once. I need time, I finally said. I need space to process this, to understand how we got here. Mom. No, Maya, this isn't something we can fix in one phone call. You broke my trust. And trust, once shattered, doesn't mend easily. I took a deep breath. When you return from Paris, when you're back in Boston, we can talk more. But right now, I need to step back. The silence that followed felt like a wall being built between us, brick by painful brick. I do love you, Mom, she said finally. Despite everything, despite all this, I never meant to hurt you. I know, I replied softly. I love you too. That's never been in question. But love without trust is wounded. And right now, that wound needs time to heal. After we hung up, I sat motionless at my kitchen table, staring at the photos on my refrigerator. The smiling faces seemed to mock me now. Evidence of a relationship I thought was built on bedrock, only to discover it had been slowly eroding beneath my feet. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure how to move forward with my daughter. The path that had always seemed clear, love, support, guide, protect, was now obscured by betrayal, by hurt too deep to simply brush aside. 3 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Maya had texted twice since our call, once to let me know she'd returned safely to Boston, and once to ask if I was ready to talk. I'd responded to the first, with brief relief, but had left the second unanswered. The wound was still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. I threw myself into work, taking on extra bookkeeping clients to fill the evenings that stretched long and quiet before me. Diane stopped by occasionally with casseroles and concerned eyes, but I deflected her questions about Maya with vague answers. How could I explain that my daughter had chosen a luxury lifestyle with a questionable man over honesty with her mother? It was a rainy Tuesday night when my phone rang with Maya's ringtone. I almost didn't answer. Our last conversation still echoed painfully in my mind, but something made me reach for it. "Hello?" I said cautiously. The sound that came through wasn't a greeting, but a sob, raw, desperate, and terrifyingly familiar. The sound of my daughter in genuine distress. "Maya? What's wrong?" All my hurt and anger evaporated instantly, replaced by maternal alarm. "Mom," her voice cracked on the single syllable. "Everything's falling apart." I didn't know who else to call. "Take a breath," I said, reverting to the calm tone I'd used through childhood nightmares and teenage heartbreaks. "Tell me what's happening." "It's Nathan." Another broken sob. He's gone, and everything's gone with him." I sank onto the couch, my knees suddenly weak. "What do you mean, gone?" "The police came to his apartment this morning. His firm is under federal investigation for fraud, massive fraud. Hundreds of millions." She drew a shuddering breath. "They say he knew they were closing in, that he liquidated everything he could and disappeared 3 days ago." My mind spun, trying to process what this meant. "Where are you now?" "I'm still in Paris." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He brought me back here last week, said he had more business to handle. Then yesterday, he didn't come back to the hotel. His phone goes straight to voicemail, and this morning, my key card didn't work anymore." "He left you stranded in Paris?" I gripped the phone tighter, stunned by the callousness. "The hotel says his credit card was declined." "All his cards were. They're letting me stay in the lobby for now, but I have to be out by tonight." Her voice broke again. "Mom, I don't have enough money for a flight home. I barely have enough for food. My own cards are maxed out from these past months with him. The clothes, the restaurants. I was so stupid." I closed my eyes, picturing my daughter alone in a foreign country, abandoned by the man she'd chosen trust. The man she'd chosen over being honest with me. I could have said, "I told you so." I could have reminded her that I'd questioned his character from the beginning. I could have made her grovel a bit longer, let her feel the full weight of her choices. But she was my daughter, and she was in trouble. "Give me an hour," I said firmly. "I'm going to figure this out." The next 2 hours were a blur of phone calls. First to my bank, arranging a withdrawal against my modest emergency fund. Then to the airline, booking the soonest possible flight from Paris to Boston. Finally to the hotel, paying for one more night so Maya would have a place to sleep until her morning flight. As I hung up from the last call, I found myself staring at the photo of Maya on my refrigerator. Her college graduation, her face alight with hope and possibility. Before Nathan, before Paris, before the lie. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "I don't deserve your help after what I did. But thank you, Mom. I don't know what I would have done." I typed back, "We'll talk when you're home, get some rest." What I didn't type was that my help came with conditions this time. That trust, once broken, had to be rebuilt brick by painful brick. That actions had consequences, and that her choices, both with Nathan and with me, had created ripples she would need to address. 2 days later, I waited at the airport arrival gate. The crowd parted, and there she was, my daughter, but not as I'd seen her on Instagram. Gone were the designer clothes and confident smile. Instead, she wore jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her eyes red-rimmed from what I suspected were days of crying. When she saw me, she froze for a moment, uncertainty written across her face. Then she rushed forward, collapsing into my arms with a sob that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my shoulder. "For everything. For lying to you. For not seeing what was right in front of me. For thinking money and status could replace honesty and family." I held her tightly, this child of mine who had wandered so far from the values I thought I'd instilled, only to be forced by cruel circumstance to find her way back. "We have a long road ahead," I said softly but firmly. "Trust doesn't come back overnight." She nodded against my shoulder. "I know. And I'll do whatever it takes, for however long it takes." As we walked to the car, Maya's shoulders slumped under the weight of everything she'd lost. Not just Nathan and the lifestyle he'd provided, but also the easy trust that had once existed between us. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a fragile hope stirring. Not because karma had dealt my daughter a harsh lesson, I would never have wished this pain on her, no matter how hurt I'd been, but because sometimes it takes losing everything to remember what truly matters. First step, I said as we drove away from the airport, is getting you back on your feet. Financially, emotionally, all of it. And the second step? She asked quietly. Learning to be honest with each other again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Maya reached across the console and took my hand. I'm ready, she said. And this time, I believed her.